This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Alexa seems to think that she has a part in this, so she can shut the hell up. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our HackMiami meeting this afternoon, our virtual conference. I just want to go over a few housewarming tips before we turn it over to Honey and our presenter today. So you'll notice today we are in GoToMeeting. It is not GoToWebinar, it is GoToMeeting. And you must be responsible adults and you must take care of silencing yourself, muting yourself, and being the own police of your microphone. Now, if it does get out of hand, if too many people unmute at one time, we will have to mute all. So don't want to do that. Chris has said that he is happy to welcome questions in the middle. So it's not a normal webinar where everybody joins and just shuts up and whatever. He wanted it to be interactive. So he's welcoming your questions in between. A few things about the platform, GoToMeeting platform. We are recording today. When you get connected, your video is probably turned on automatically. So as good hackers that we are, you probably have a piece of paper over it or tape over it or whatever. But like Gustavo and Diego, just want you to know that your cameras are on, although they're covered. So just be careful of sharing your camera as well. Some of the other things, make sure that, like I said, mute yourself so that we don't hear your phones and things in the background, and make sure you don't put your line, if you are dialed in by phone, make sure you don't put your line on hold because sometimes we can hear hold music from that. Other things to keep in mind, GoToMeeting hates me. I've used it every day for the last 15 years, but it does hate me. So at least one time during this meeting, my voice will go out at least for 20 seconds. I've not disappeared. I'm still here. And I will come back again. Hopefully it won't happen while Chris is presenting, but it does happen. And the other thing is, should we happen to get disconnected, because that happens occasionally, should we happen to get disconnected, we will make sure the meeting link is in events. Just come right back in. We'll open it up as quickly as possible. And anything else? The meeting is set to go from 2 to about 4 today, but depending on how much material Chris has, that could change. I don't know exactly how much he has and how many questions you guys have, and discussions. We are happy to hang out a little bit afterwards for a little bit of a networking if you like, so we can discuss tips on going forward, how you liked it, other suggestions that you might have. So we're happy to do that as well. And again, for the new people that are joining, we are recording this, so just want to let you know that. Now, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Honey so she can give you an intro, introduce Chris, and we'll get started. Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. It's super great that you guys could be here online today. Thank you for being flexible about our meeting location and moving to the online platform, which seemed to go really great so far. So just a reminder that currently HackMiami Con is probably not going to happen, and I think has already been canceled. So in the event that you have planned for that, also if you are a B-Sides Orlando participant, that has also been rescheduled, and more information will be coming out shortly about both of those events, I'm sure. If you are not a member of our Slack channel and you would like to become a member of our Slack channel, please just email one of our members a request, or you can email me at honey%27, you have to spell it out, at gmail.com. Well, you have to spell out percent, not the 27. And eventually, I'm sure I'll get back to you. So yeah, so I want to thank Chris Lopez, our presenter today. He's been super flexible working with me on this, making this meeting a reality since Wednesday, when we decided we could not, in good faith, show up to the library because it kind of has cooties on the best of days, let alone right now. So so without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Chris and remind people that if they don't want their cameras on, to please turn them off.
Fabulous. Chris, it's
excellent. Thank you. So am I a presenter now?
I am making you the presenter now. I'm sending you the presenter.
Excellent.
You'll get the pop-up on your screen. Make sure you accept that.
All right, just to verify, everyone can see my screen?
I can see your screen. Looks fabulous.
Awesome. All right. So let me just get this in the background ready, and then we can start this up really quick. All right. So I am going to share my camera. Why not? Let's make this a little bit more personal. Again, I want to ensure that everyone here feels comfortable asking questions while I'm talking. This is one of those conversations that I love to have. And any questions, just, write in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on that as I'm talking, or, just like interrupt me. It's fine. Just try to make this as conversational as possible. So again, my name is Christopher Lopez, and today we're going to be talking about Sysmon from an investigative standpoint. And let's just jump right into it. So all right, so who am I? Mentioned that a little bit already. First and foremost, I'm a father. So I am what's considered to be a blue teamer. I'm on that side of the fence when it comes to cybersecurity. And currently, I'm a cyber intelligence analyst and, of course, a human being. So if anyone wants to talk to me on Twitter, there goes my Twitter handle. And a little bit about me, I love logs. I love working on investigations. And I really love learning how things work. So Sysmon, let's get into it. Why are we talking about this? Well, it is arguably one of the best endpoint detection logging mechanisms that we currently have for Windows systems. It's part of the sysinternals tool set that a lot of us may be familiar with from like an IT perspective. A lot of these tools were more geared towards IT related tasks, but later on the field realized that, hey, there's a lot that we can gain from these tools in order to help us with security related events. And we have to thank the person that's on the slide, Mark. He is the creator of Sysmon, and he's from Microsoft, and he's really awesome, and it's great that he released this for us to use. A lot of organizations use Sysmon in order to detect bad. That's what it's all about, right? So this goes way beyond the standard logging of Windows, like, log on events and things like that. And the best part, arguably, is that it can be deployed really easily, and it can be deployed to hundreds of thousands of systems. I mean, I've seen it in my experience, which of course then we send to a SIM, right, to be able to correlate data properly. But the last point, it's fun to analyze. I love Sysmon, like I said in the beginning, and we're just going to start diving into how to set it up. So here is a slide just showing anyone that's not familiar with Sysmon how it's set up. It's incredibly easy. What I do and what I'm going to show in the demo is how to do it in a lab environment. And basically, it is a command. Once you download it from Microsoft, you run a simple command and point it to the config file, which is an XML file. And we'll go over the XML file more during the demo, but essentially that's it, right? Set it up and it starts logging stuff, and you can just make rules based on certain things. So the XML file itself, what's great about it is that it is something that can be used to whitelist. So an example of that is, let's say that your environment, you have specific applications that are developed by, developers internally. That's always happening. And basically you want to stop logging or stop, flooding your SIM with a million events tied to these executables that are legitimate. You could whitelist them. And there's a lot of examples for Sysmon configs. Swift on Security, a lot of people here may know them on Twitter. They have an awesome GitHub Sysmon config. That's the one I use. I've seen a lot of organizations that use that as like a foundational template, and then, just build on it, add stuff to it, include this, disinclude, whatever you want to call it, exclude. And yeah, so let's go into how it looks. So this is an example. And there's a lot. I'm not a huge XML person, but it's pretty easy to digest once you look at an example of it. And from this, you can just include or exclude anything that you may find interesting or you may not find interesting, and you can build it based on each event ID. So this event ID that we're looking at, which we're going to cover in a few slides, is for a process create event. And it's basically just saying, you know, what we want to even log on these machines. So once you install it, it's always important to understand where it is. So let's say that, for example, you have an alert in your environment that tells you that some bad file did something bad. Let's say like an AV type alert, antivirus, whatever it is that you use in your organization. Well, let's say that you don't have a SIM, or for some reason these logs are missing in the SIM. That does happen. I don't know why, but it definitely can deter you in an investigation. So it's always really important whenever you're going to remote to a system, connect to a system, to know where it is. And I put the path on the bottom. We're going to go over that in the demo of going to it, in case anyone here is not familiar with where these logs are stored. But that's where it is, and that's what you pull to be able to analyze it and see what occurred on that system since Sysmon was running. Of course, this is a service that runs, so monitor any changes in that service running, because that's usually an indicator that someone may have stopped it, and that warrants some investigation. But yeah, so that's the path, and go to that, pull it, and start analyzing. So event IDs. There's too many to cover on this presentation, unfortunately. As much as I would love to sit here and talk to you guys for 3 hours, 4 hours, that would drag on a little bit. So we're going to focus on a few of these that I've used the most to be able to make a determination on something bad or not bad happening. And it's all about correlating some of these. And I wrote them all down here. I may have missed one or two, not sure, but there's a lot of events, a lot of event IDs that you can filter on when you're using a SIM or you're using like any kind of log parsing tool to be able to, you know, view the ones that you care about the most. But we're going to get into a few of them here in these slides and more in the demo about, you know, what's important to look at. So let's just start out with the first one. Here we go. Process create, event ID 1. This is arguably the most important one. The reason I say that is because this is logged every single time something runs. Super awesome. So Microsoft does have a default log for this that's outside of Sysmon. So if for some reason you can't deploy Sysmon in your environment, I would definitely say to check mark the 4688, I believe, event, which is the same as this one. But since this is with Sysmon, it correlates with all the other Sysmon logs, and it's super important because it tells you when things are doing stuff. And it's a good indicator, or at least a good base indicator, to tell you that something has occurred, right? So an example of that is, let's say that we're going to go back to the AV event, right? So a bad file was seen by your antivirus and it logs it, and you're trying to do an investigation to see what happened. One of the first things that I do is see, did AV actually stop it, right? AV is really good at low-hanging fruit, but a lot of AV is built on signature detection, and we all know that that kind of can be bypassed. I mean, if you recompile an executable a few times, AV engines won't be aware of the hash, so that's just something to, you know, keep in mind. But if it is tied to a specific executable and you're trying to see if something actually did occur, even though there is a AV related event, you can check to see if the process actually ran. So that's one way that I try to see if for some reason, and I've seen this before in the environment where I'll see an AV alert and it's like, hey, this happened. And I'm like, okay, so did it get to the point that I need to do something with this machine? And usually that leads to, has it installed persistence, or has it done something that warrants re-image of the machine? And one of the first things I look for is, did it actually run? Because these are two different log sources that you're comparing here, and process creates will tell you if something has actually run. So very important to keep in mind with Sysmon logs. And that's what it looks like. So I put this on here a little bit as a joke because I think it's interesting, and we're going to dig into some of these events in a little bit. But this is me, as you can see here. I mean, there's a few lines here that are interesting. For example, this is a process create for PowerPoint, right? I'm just running PowerPoint. And as you can see for the date, it is the 13th of March, it's yesterday. So yes, I was working on a presentation yesterday because I forgot to put something in there. And this is me working on a presentation before I decided to change the title because it was too long. So this is, and also something to keep in mind, it does capture the directory in which this file is executing from. So it's in the downloads folder because I had it on Google Drive. I know, maybe I shouldn't use that, but I had it on Google Drive and I downloaded it onto my machine so I can work on it from different machines in my house and things like that. But what I really want everyone to focus on here is the hash. So in the hashes section in the bottom here, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, hopefully. Basically, that hash is super important. So every time that an image executes, it is hashed, and it does contain the hash of that in process create events. And these hashes are exactly what I use to try to learn a little bit more about the file that's executing. I'll use OSENT. We're all probably familiar with like VirusTotal and things like that, just to check to see what this is, if it's a file that I've never heard of. There's a lot of files out there, and the hash is a good way of being able to figure out maybe this is that, right? And then you can just keep going on with the investigation. We'll do a little bit of that in a demo as well. So the next event that I want to really focus on are file creates. So in contrast to process creates, a file create occurs when a file is created. So one of the ones that I see often is anything that has to do with an email service, let's say Outlook, for example, and someone downloads a file that is an attachment that does create a file create event. And it shows it usually in the cache directory for Outlook whenever it is that you're trying to see, what someone did before they move it to their desktop or documents folder. But throughout that course of moving things or putting things in certain places or creating anything that is a file, on Windows, it does log an event. So this is really good when you're trying to determine what a file did or what a image did. So let's say that it's a malicious file or malicious image that you're looking at, and you expect it based on some OSENT information that you gathered throughout your investigation that it should drop a file in a certain location. You can look for the image being bad.exe, right? Dropping this bad.exe file somewhere else. Really good to be able to correlate that between process IDs. And I'm going to try to remember the process ID to mention it during a demo, because that's a great way to correlate between different events and just like group them all together so you can see what happened after something actually executed. That's an excellent correlation field that you can use. So let's talk about registry events. There's a lot here. Anyone that's really familiar with Windows or has opened up regedit in their lifetime knows that the registry can be daunting. There's a lot of stuff going on. And of course, due to how big the registry is and how much stuff is involved in a registry, there are different events that are related to registries or registry changes. So there are 3 different events, 12, 13, and 14. And, we're going to see creation type events for creating keys. We're going to see a value being set for a key, and any kind of rename is also set up there as well. The reason that this is so important is because one of the main ways that, I don't want to say main, one of the ways that malware attempts to, hide itself or install persistence is through registry type changes. For example, run keys, probably you've heard of that, or run once keys. Of course, there's other things like startup folders and things like that, and scheduled tasks, for example. But when you're looking at Sysmon, it's really interesting to see this occur in the registry. So it's always something to keep in mind with Sysmon events. So DNS queries. Now, this is really cool. I don't know how large some of the organizations that everyone here, works in, but DNS can be a problem. We see that on Twitter all the time. Everyone's blaming DNS for everything because it is a behemoth, and sometimes there is just so much logging surrounding DNS type events. What's really interesting is that the creators of Sysmon, Mark and all those people over there at Microsoft, they added this recently as an event for Sysmon, and I've loved it. I mean, it's really cool because you're able to see when a file, not when they actually make that, let's say that it is a file that is known to communicate with a command and control server, right? We'll see it execute, we'll see it do its thing, and then at some point it's going to try to reach out. Well, before it actually does reach out, it will, the way that things work with connections, right? It'll send a query or, to a DNS server to get the information that it needs in order to know which address space to speak to. in order to actually pull that secondary payload or that primary payload that it needs in order to start, doing bad stuff. So you can actually see this and correlate it based on, hey, this executed and it led to a DNS event, which then led to a network connection, which then led to a download of this bad stuff. So really awesome event, and it is event 22. And we may see some of this in the demo as well. Hopefully it does show up. All right. So the reason why I, wanted to try to not fly through the slides, I just wanted to show some background. It's because I feel like there's a lot more to cover and a lot more to gain from seeing it all work on a demo. And as we know, this is a live demo. So please, if I mistype something, it's just the way it is. Let me know, and keep it conversational. I know I've just been kind of talking, but interrupt me if you're confused about something or if you want to add something. There's always something to learn. I can definitely learn something as well from all this too. So let's get into it. Hopefully this all works out. So I'm going to open up one of my VMs here. My infected VM, right? And we're going to go through a few things. And I have a long list of things over here on my other screen that I'm going to try to follow in order to ensure that we keep at, in the right step throughout this process, because there are a lot of steps involved in showing this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are actually going to focus on installing Sysmon. So, let me make sure I don't make that mistake again for the third time today. And that is to make sure that I run this as an administrator, right? Because if you're going to install Sysmon, you got to run it as an administrator. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to the folder of my choosing, and I forgot what the name is of this user. I believe it's root. And then desktop, and then I believe it's Sysmon. There we go. All right, so in this root, I almost typed ls for the third time today. We see that we have a few folders here that are really important to us, or a couple files here that are really important to us. So whenever it is you download Sysmon, you're going to be given these 3 files. So something that I am going to do now is I'm going to show what the config looks like before we add it and then run it. All right, so here we go. Notepad++. As I talked about earlier, this is the base configuration that was provided by Swift on Security. Really awesome. I can't download it now because this machine is not connected to the network because we're going to infect it. So I don't want any of that stuff happening. So a lot of stuff, like it goes through each event and includes and excludes things that we don't need. And it's a really good base configuration. But as you can see, it is really robust. So I always keep copies of this everywhere in case I make a mistake, which being an analyst, you're going to make mistakes. It happens all the time. But having a backup, even of config files, is super important. All right. So now we're just going to move that into this folder, and we're just going to run it. And I'm going to show you just how easy it is to run this. So Sysmon -I for install, and I'm just going to point it to the config file. And that's it. I mean, that's super awesome, super easy. Just to ensure that we're all on the same page, we're going to go to the services, if I can spell this properly. Hopefully that's what it is that I'm looking for. Looks kind of strange. But we're also going to show where this file is, or where this log file is. So C drive, there's going to be a lot of stuff opening up as we walk through this. So just don't bear with it. So Windows System 32, if anyone's curious about where all these logs are stored without having to go to the event viewer, they're all going to be in here in the log section of this. So there's some that we're familiar with here that we see a lot. For example, if you go all the way down, you'll see like the security log, which is something that a lot of us may be familiar with just like regular login events and things like that. But now that we have installed Sysmon, we have this wonderful little Sysmon event log that has already started collecting events. So we're going to come in here and just look at it before we do anything bad, just to see what it looks like. So here we go. And it logs a bunch of stuff, so it may take a little bit of time to open up. And I believe that this should, just waiting for it to finish up. Then we can start moving on to a couple other things here. Once this actually does work. And of course it's not responding, because why would it? And let's go all the way to the beginning, right? So pretty interesting. There's some events here that we didn't go over. We're just gonna kind of walk through them. So there's a event 16, which is for configuration state has changed. This is when I gave Sysmon the configuration, and it logs this as, hey, your config has changed. This is really good to keep in mind whenever it is that you're rolling this out to your environment, and you want to ensure that all machines that are targeted with this change have actually changed. You can monitor for this event ID to ensure that it actually did occur. Very important to make sure that everyone, like all the machines that you're monitoring for something specific, are on the same configuration. So then the service, right? So the service started. So that just means that Sysmon started as we would expect, right? And then we have a couple more here. This is just showing a process create, which is the one that we talked about a lot. And it is Sysmon running. And it's just saying that Sysmon has ran from the services executable. And, you know, we're just a couple things here, and we're just going to come back to this in a second after we do something bad to the machine and run some malware, and we'll spend some time with that as well. So here is where it is that we would find the actual service that we're concerned with, and it's right there. And that is a service that was installed when it was that you ran the executable. Really interesting service to monitor. Now, there could be things that occur that certain services may restart or, like, you know, stop for some reason. So it may not be the best to always detect this, because it doesn't necessarily mean that something bad occurred on the machine. But I'm always interested to see the modification of services, especially Sysmon, because if I was an attacker, well, then again, it may alert somebody. But let's just say that I was not concerned with someone monitoring the services starting or stopping on a machine, but I was more concerned with hiding my tracks and not anyone, you know, and preventing analysts from being able to see some of my executables run or trigger any alerts related to any activity that I would be performing on the box. I would try to turn off the Sysmon service, especially if it's being sent to a SIM. This would just stop any logs that would normally happen on Sysmon from happening in the first place. So that's one way of looking at it. And that's where it's located here. Okay, so now we have it installed. We know where it's at. We're gonna go back to it in a little bit, right? So let's just like close this out, because we don't need that right now. Now I'm gonna show something else that I think is really cool to look at logs, especially Sysmon logs, without using Event Viewer. Personally, I think that Event Viewer is very cumbersome. I don't think that it's very easy to search through. It's definitely my last resort. So luckily, Microsoft, again, gotta give them props where props are due, because not only did they create sysinternal and all that stuff, they also created this, which is Log Parsing Studio. So here, and we're gonna come back to this later after we run some bad stuff. Here, it's really cool because you can feed it a query and you can point it to the location of a log that you're looking at. It doesn't have to be Sysmon, it can be the security logs as well. And you basically can parse out all the fields that are of interest, and you can use this search to search for specific things that you find interesting. So I like using this if I don't have a SIM to be able to analyze different logs for a machine. So we'll come back to this once we run the file and go through the process of pulling the Sysmon log, putting it on a desktop, and taking a look at it in this way of looking at it. All right, so now the file of interest is this file right here, right? And just to ensure that we're all on the same page, let's take a look at what the world says about this file. Okay, so let's, hopefully I don't mistype anything, probably will. And we have this file here, right? Yes. And in order for us to hash it or get the hash of it, we're just going to do this just to check to see what said about it. So there goes a hash. So that get file hash command, if anyone here is not familiar with it, it's just a very easy command that you can run on PowerShell to get the hashes of specific things that you're looking at. So I'm going to actually just open this up, and we're just going to take a look to see what OSINT says about it. OSINT being VirusTotal. It's usually what I gravitate towards. And so here we go, VirusTotal. I'm going to paste this here. All right, so that is an indicator right there that this is definitely bad. These are all different engines that are saying, hey, 52 out of 70. Usually in most organizations, due to how many signature hits this does have, the likelihood of this file running properly in most organizations that have proper AV is low. But of course, things get around AV. But this is definitely an indicator as to this file probably not being bad. Like if I saw this, it would warrant me looking a little bit deeper. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with VirusTotal, but basically I always pay attention to the behavior side of things to see like what I expect it to do, you know, and what I should be looking for this specific file. For example, we have some registry keys that are set. We got this set as well, which is interesting. We got some deletions of keys as well. So those are things that Sysmon would help us to be able to see. Really cool stuff. And we also have some deletes, and let's see if we have anything else that would warrant some interest. Oh, and we have a little DNS resolution here. And I'm not sure what this is. I haven't really looked at this, but why not just take a look to see what it says about this. So for some reason, it looks like no one really thinks that this is bad, which I guess is okay. And relations, well, here's something interesting. For this .biz, which I don't know what it is, I haven't really looked at it. There are multiple files that have been scanned previously that communicate with it with very high detection rates. I don't know what that means. I don't know if this is just like people testing stuff, but it does warrant some interest. It's like, okay, well, this might be a bad domain, potentially. We don't know that yet. So that is just something to keep in mind, something interesting. And yeah, so my son may come in here from time to time. I'm home, so just be aware of that. Gotta give me a second, okay? And so here we go. Let's focus on a few more things in regards to this file. So one of the commands that I think is really interesting, if anyone here is not familiar with it, might as well get some more information about what this file is, and that is the strings command. Why would we want to run this? Well, because it may detail what else we would like to know about this file based on any, let me edit this, based on anything that's readable of the file. So this just looks at anything on this file that may be readable via ASCII, and it just puts it on here. And all I did was just throw it into a text, whatever, a notepad, and I'm just looking at it on Notepad++. So something interesting. That file looks like it's a PDF file. Well, it's definitely not. This is an executable, and that can also be seen here where, when we did a tab completion for that file, definitely not a PDF, but it has the picture of a PDF. I mean, that's, attackers may do that from time to time. And I don't know if there's anything in here. I haven't really looked at this to see if there's anything that warrants more, or gives us more information about this file, but there are some interesting things here. Sometimes it does give you information as to like the communication that this file may have, which I think is pretty cool. Also, it looks like they left us a note here, they being whoever created this malicious file. The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. Awesome, thank you. I don't know what they were doing, but yeah. So there goes a nice little note from a potential attacker. If you're looking at strings, why not? All right, so that's strings. So now let's actually run the file, and then we can start looking at Sysmon related events for that file. Okay, so we're just gonna run it and see what happens. Of course, this is all part of my home lab. This is not gonna infect my actual host machine. That would not be fun. So here we go, run it. And it disappeared. All right, so there is some self-deletion characteristics to this file. So that's good to know. So now let's start taking a look at stuff. So we know that from OSVent, there should be some logging associated to what this file tries to do on Sysmon, because Sysmon does capture DNS requests like we talked about. It does capture registry level events, and it would also capture the fact that I just executed that file. Now, the likelihood of a user just executing some random PDF file on their desktop is hopefully low, but the likelihood of a user downloading a PDF from an email is really high. We see that a lot, phishing and all that good stuff, right? So hopefully AV stops most of those, or you have restrictions in your environment to stop certain attachments from actually being able to get in, or you set policies that you can set via group policy to file associate certain things like PDF files and executables to open up in Notepad. That actually renders a lot of attachments useless, and things like Emotet, which a lot of us may hear about, wouldn't necessarily work. And of course, those are dependent on macros and all that good stuff. But that's a side note, just something to keep in mind. This is something that does happen where users will open up a PDF and it disappears, and they're like, all right, well, there was no alerts or anything that happened on my machine. I guess I'm good to go. Why would I let the security folk know what's going on? I'm just gonna keep living my life. So let's open this up and see what that file actually did after it, basically deleted itself. All right. So when we first opened this, we had like 15 events, but since then we've done quite a lot of things. So let's try to see what's happened here, and we can kind of just go through it. All right, so these are the ones that I showed in the beginning, which basically shows that things were opened. Let's try to see some files here that are interesting. So this is a log. Let me just move this. And as you can see, anything on Event Viewer can be a little bit difficult to use. But this is basically running the Log Parser Studio that we'll get to later on. And it's really cool to be able to see things happening like that. So we have Log Parser Studio actually creating a file. And that's interesting. That looks not good, but we're just going to keep moving on. And PowerShell running, right? And then PowerShell script being created. And then here we go. So now we see that this is the strings command that I ran a little bit earlier via PowerShell. And we do see that it is actually capturing the command line of this occurring. Always really cool. And of course, the parent would be PowerShell because we ran it from PowerShell, which then launched the string, which is the actual image. And the strings is part of the PS tools, folder, which is in System32. I put it there, and that's a sysinternals tool, the strings. So that makes sense as to why, even though we ran it on PowerShell, PowerShell is considered to be the parent image. So ran strings against this. It doesn't give us the output, of course, but it just shows us what occurred. So this is strings and the EULA being accepted, value being set. No big deal. This is Notepad looking at strings, or actually, yeah, opening up the output of that, and a couple things that are Windows related. Okay, so here we go. So this is the first event related to everything that occurred from the point that I double clicked on the malicious file and forward. So the first event that we have here is of the file launching itself, right? So I'm using Explorer, right? Because Explorer is what you use when you're clicking on stuff in Explorer, right? The File Explorer, for example. So I clicked on it. It launched the process. This is the exact same hash that we gathered from the get file hash command on PowerShell, right? So that matches. So this would be an indicator to look for this, right? And now let's see what happened. First thing, for some reason it sets this value in the registry in this location. So that's number one. And of course, a lot of these things are going to happen like at the same time, because things move a lot faster on computers than we sometimes really think about. and a lot of events can happen within the same second, right? So here's one that's really interesting, and that is a value being set, and this is something that we saw on the OSINT and VirusTotal, that goes to this location and sets this value, right, this binary value of 2, or this hexadecimal value of 2 for this, which would make it so that if anyone's not familiar with what this basically hides the file. So when we can look for that later. So it's saying to hide it, right? File created. So the image is the original file that we ran, right? The bad one. Wish I would have called it bad.exe or something. Would have been easier to remember that. So for me, so then the target file name is the file that was created, and it's a bat file. So the likelihood of that still being there is probably low. Haven't really looked into this specific executable to see too much of what it does. So let's just go there and see if it's still there. Most likely it ran and just deleted itself, or it hit itself, most likely. That's what I would do. And it's probably not there anymore. So we have the app data. No, I don't have hidden things open. Hold on one second so I can add some hidden items. All right, app data. And we're gonna go into the local. We're gonna go into the temp folder. There's a bunch of stuff here, but the likelihood of seeing a bat file is probably really low. And I don't see a bat file or anything that has the numbers or L12, whatever. So probably deleted itself. Next process, create. Oh, well, that's to be expected. So this parent, right, the parent image, the bad file, ran, and it executed this after it created it. Okay, so that makes sense. It created this bat file. We don't know what that bat file does. If we had a copy of it, we can just open it up on a notepad and take a look at it, see what it does, but we don't necessarily have that at this moment. But we do see that it did run it. Okay, so that's step 2 of, well, step 3. It already did a few things. It changed the registry, it created a file, and then it ran that file that it changed. So, and of course, it's all happening in the same 2 seconds. Now, this is another one that's interesting. This is something that I'm constantly looking for whenever it is that I'm hunting for anything in our environment, or the environment that I oversee as an analyst, right? It's run keys, the run once or the run key. So as you can see here, it set this run once key on the registry from this bad file in order to execute this every time this key runs. Makes sense. We don't know what this does, but the likelihood of it being there is probably low, but it's there. So now we have another indicator, and let's start taking some notes here as we learn more. So we have this target object, and let's go here, do some nice copy pasting, and we have the bat file. Let's go back to that just to have this. So let me just see, file create. All right. And so we have a few things that happened, right? So let's go back to it. This is running the file, and this is the run once key that we were just talking about. Now this one's interesting. This matches exactly what we saw in VirusTotal, right? I believe it's word for word the exact same thing. I actually have it on this screen, that's why I'm looking away. And I believe that that's probably the same, same URL, or same domain. So that's another indicator that's supported by OSINT whenever it is you're looking for, something malicious. So it did attempt to query DNS for this to be able to gain information about what this domain is or where it's located, to be able to initiate the second stage of this. We don't know why it's reaching out to this domain, but for some reason it is. But something to keep in mind is that the query results are empty. And the reason for that is because the DNS query did not work. If it would have worked, so Sysmon DNS events actually capture the query and the response all in the same log. So that took me some time to remember because I'm so used to seeing two different types of things when you're looking at packets. But this captures both, and the fact that the query is not there, the query result is not there, it means that it wasn't successful in actually querying that domain for the IP. So sometimes I look to see, requests that are being made that don't succeed for some reason, especially if the machine has, it's connected to the network. Why is it not working? What's going on, with that domain that it's trying to reach? So that's another indicator that we have, right? So let's take a look at that. And we're going to put that here because we're just trying to take some notes. Of course, one of the most important things that an analyst does is the report that they create about a specific event. Something that I probably need to spend a little bit more time doing, because I find this other stuff so much more interesting. But still, it's good to take notes while you're looking at stuff, just to, further enforce or further, emphasize what happened to lead to some kind of mitigation effort. So let's keep going up the list. Keep seeing this hidden thing occur, and it keeps triggering the same D word change. So let's keep going through here and see if anything else is different. So I don't see anything besides those two constantly happening. There's a clear name for star at this point. My guess is that it's trying anything at this point because it failed the first time and it wasn't able to get to it. So it's like, hey, can I reach something to see that this machine does have, any kind of network connectivity. And if we keep going, we're going to see the same stuff, it appears, that it's just setting that key, trying to run it over and over and over and over and over again. So it installed some level of persistence. So now, well, let's take a look at that. I think that's always interesting. Oh, can't spell, right? No problem. Now, there's many tools out there that, can be used in order to review certain things within the registry. You can take snapshots of a registry before you actually run something and compare against it, like auto runs tools and things like that. I felt like that was a little bit outside of the scope for this conversation. So I decided to just, look at the registry and take a look at these entries that we see. So one of the things that we know occurred, right, is that this was changed. So let's actually take a look at this. And let's go here, and hopefully this copy paste works. If not, we'll just start taking a look at where we're at and maybe go back one. So we have let's see what we did. We got this. Let's see. We're all the way down Microsoft, current version, Explorer, Advanced. Okay, we're here. And that's it. So then we see hidden, and we see that the to value has been set. From my experience, the to value means that it is indeed hidden. I believe the one value from previous research I've done means that it's available, and it's setting it for this file. To go back to here, for the file for not this one actually. This is another file, but let's see if we can find it. Nope, that's not what we want to do. Okay, so let's focus on this too. So it's setting that value to hide itself, which would make sense with what we saw when we executed the file as well. If it didn't delete it, it hid it, right? So if we go back to the registry and just take a quick look at this, and we are, nope, that's not what we want. Of course, it's a demo, so let's hope it works. So we got to go to software. So let's just focus on that for now. Software 21S, Microsoft. Let's go back to this key. There we go. So this shows you that this actually is set so that it continues to run that file. So this is something that a lot of malicious files do to install persistence and do what it wants to do, right? And due to the fact that it's hidden, the likelihood of being able to see that is probably pretty low, but there's no reason why we can't try to take a look at it and see if I can actually look at it. Yeah, here we go. So let's go into this directory and take a look. Since it's still trying to, go there, it would make sense if it's there, right? Why would it not be on disk? So when you do an LS, you see nothing is there, right? Of course not. Why would it be there, especially since we saw the key was set to hide this? So let's do an ls - hidden, I believe is the right word for that. So we see the hidden folder, which is matching exactly what we saw there. So that's how it is trying to hide itself. So let's actually go into that. All right, so we are there, even though it didn't show that, right? ls again, of course, not going to show that anything is there. But when we do the hidden flag for this command, we do see that its executable is here. And my guess is this randomly named executable is probably the same hash as the previous one that we ran a long time ago. So let's go back into the history. Oh, not there anymore. Oh, because it deleted, it moved. But I believe that that's the exact same hash that we saw previously. And we can probably just verify that. 1 second on VirusTotal. And let's go to summary. And this is what we got. Let's move this over. And here we go. 15C3CC, yep. FEE. So what that means is that they didn't necessarily delete itself. It renamed itself and put itself into that directory, hid itself, set a key to be able to change the registry and run it in order to make that connection outbound in order to get the secondary payload, which we stopped due to the fact that this is not actually connected to the network in order to actually allow this to succeed. So we went through a lot there, which is a lot of fun. I mean, this stuff is what I try to do almost on a daily basis at work. And let's try to look at it with these logs in a different location. So let's make sure that this is closed actually, because it will complain. So let's do a nice little copy, paste. Should work. Okay, good. And I don't know if the query that I'm going to run is going to work because it is an older query that I pulled a long time ago. So I don't necessarily know if it's accurate in its parsing, but here goes a template that we can use with Parsing Studio. And again, this is to look at Sysmon without having to go onto the actual event viewer, which again, maybe there's people out there that actually enjoy to use it. I personally don't. So this is what it looks like. And what we want to do is go to point it to this specific folder. So instead of typing all that out, because who enjoys to type, right? We're going to go and just get the path in order to ensure that we can point this query properly within the Parsing Studio, start running it. So where is it actually? It's Microsoft. And let me just type it here. Microsoft and copy paste. And we're going to put that right in here. There you go. And what we do is copy paste that. And we paste it right here into the new query section. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set the log type to event log, because that's what it is. And as you can see here, there's many logs that you can use that you can put in here and parse them out. Again, I don't know if this is going to work properly or as good as it should probably work because I don't necessarily know if it's parsing properly, since there has been changes with Sysmon since the last time that I ran this. So now it runs that you press a little red icon here. Oh, man, it did parse some stuff out, but it looks like there are some issues. But like we talked about in the beginning of this presentation, or this demo, is you can actually search keywords. And that is the beauty of this. because instead of analyzing everything one by one, I can actually see things that occurred based on the events, right? Like this being one, which is an event, a process create, which shows the first time that it actually ran, and then just basically ensure that the time is set up properly, right? We have the time here, and then we have, I think this is set the way that we want it, right? So this is going up, and this is going down. And then it just shows, everything that occurred within, that matches that for this file, right? Super awesome. As you can see, it's continuously trying to run that over and over and over again. But yeah, I mean, that is how you can use this and maybe parse this out just a little bit better, because it seems like it's not, working as it should, unfortunately. But this is how you would use Log Parser Studio instead of Windows Event Viewer in order to actually view these Sysmon events. That's kind of most of what I have here to show. If anyone has any questions or anyone wants to see anything else related to this, let me know. Again, I know I've been talking this whole time, but hopefully this is helpful. Sysmon's amazing. Reach out to me if you want, to find out more about this or anything that you can do to teach this to yourself or to others or anything like that. And I will be putting the slides on the Slack after this presentation, and you can reach out to me there as well. So that's all I got for right now.
Chris?
Yeah.
Hey, okay, and also, so thank you again, and we've recorded this presentation. We're gonna be posting this to the HackMiami YouTube channel as well, and I'd like to just remind everybody that there's going to be a PHAC talk after this, and the way to get into that is going to be posted in Slack. If you're not in Slack and you want the details, I can go ahead and try to find them and post them to this chat. So just hang back for a little, and before I exit the chat, I'll go ahead and I'll post those details in this chat. Oh, hey, thanks, McGrath. Boom, there that went right into the chat. All right, thank you. And I didn't have to do a thing, and it starts in an hour. Okay, see, look at this, productivity, synergy, that's what's up. All right, so hey, you guys are still welcome to go out for a beer after this. You just might want to just have it by yourself in your own yard or something.
Oh, sweetie, we've been having beers the whole time. That's the beauty of the virtual meeting.
See, these are all the Florida people. We're prepared for this. We're like, oh, this is like a hurricane. Stock up on beer, and I don't get the toilet paper thing, but okay.
So we would like to open up the floor. Anybody that would like to ask a question, you can either post it in chat and I will relay the question to Chris. For y'all shy folks, I get it. For the rest of you that want to be renegades, you can unmute yourself, ask your question, and Chris is prepared.
Yeah, let's talk about it. It's fun.
Wow, crickets.
I should have.
Hold on, we got one.
Go ahead.
Hey, Modern.
It's Natalie. How you doing? So here's my question. When you were showing the log parser app, which is really cool, it's my first time actually really taking a look at that. Without going into too much detail, just when I start using it, how am I going to know if it's showing me the right info or not? Like, you were able to identify that something was wrong. What led you to that?
So let's see if we can show that here really quick. So it's all dependent on the tokens that you're extracting based on specific fields that you should expect. I will say that doing a quick search for other queries related to Log Parser Studio may be beneficial, because a lot of people have collections of these things on GitHub, for example, which is very helpful. But you'll start to see that things are missing. These are examples. Like all this stuff, like none of the hashes are being captured. Things that I would expect to be here that I put into the extract query are not here. And that's how I started to notice, okay, yeah, this is not working completely. Okay. But yeah.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Hopefully that helps. Okay,
yeah.
Awesome.
I feel like this is one of those, like, if everything's quiet for 30 seconds, we just decide to call this a day.
Yeah.
So
which is fine.
All right, guys, really, really appreciate you guys coming out. Hope to see everybody again in an hour. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Chris.
Of course.
Yes, thank you, Chris.
Sounds good.
Job.
Awesome.
Thank you. Awesome presentation.
Have a great afternoon, guys. Enjoy your weekend. Honey, I'm gonna shut it down. Good? Call it? Honey's gone. All right.